As video gamers, Ryan and I are both familiar with Don't Starve, the video game. And today we became very familiar with Don't Starve, the board game. This one's from Glass Cannon, and it aims to take that experience of Don't Starve. And if you're not familiar, it can be a painful experience. It's a
punishingly hard game.
And it's one of survival and, well, not starving.
Yeah, don't starve. And in reality, this is more like Don't Starve Together, which was this cooperative sequel, because this is cooperative. Everyone is working together to help each other survive. I mean, it is one of those cooperative games where there is so much you need to manage that you're going to spend a large majority of the time just focused on keeping yourself alive.
Yeah.
But the game does let you help out the other players. But what it also does, it gives you cooperative scenario goals that you're trying to complete. And a lot of the flavor of this game is going to come from those scenarios. Now, we were given one, the Feast of the Pig King, kind of a demo scenario that we were allowed to play through. And even that scenario kind of went in different directions based on some of the actions we took during the game. And they're promising a lot of different scenarios. So it's not, I don't want to call it like a narrative game. It's not a campaign game.
No.
But you're going to have a different experience every time you play based on those scenario cards.
Yeah, the Feast of the Pig King was kind of interesting, just to give you the premise. It's set up, it has its own sort of setup, and then you kind of follow with the scenario. And I assume all the scenarios will work this way. After an initial setup, you basically go through card one, and it's going to tell you what to do. Reveal this card, reveal that card. So we've got some cards associated with scenario revealed here. We've got one here in the center of the board, which is sort of the home base area, the camp.
Yeah, the portal.
Yes, the portal. But in this one, there was this we need to effectively make these offerings and bring these things back and arrange them in this little grid here, and to varying degrees of success potentially, or maybe even failure. And depending on which route we didn't choose to take, but we happened to take in that respect, different things would occur in order for us to actually get to the end of the scenario.
Yeah, now we've set this up to be kind of a game in progress here, kind of after a first round of play, so that we can show you some of like the more advanced things that happen. But at the start of the game, you're going to place all of these tiles out in a very particular pattern. That pattern is dictated on the scenario card. You're going to set that up, and you're going to set up this board up here with a different arrangement of tiles. These are called the needs tiles. This is kind of dictating what you need to do to survive every night. I guess night or day based on which tile's up. The game is going to last 6 rounds. Hopefully you can make it to the end of the 6th round by completing the scenario before you get to the end of the 6th round, but maybe not. But these are going to dictate what you need to do at the end of every round, and each scenario has its own card that's going to show you how to set this up, but also give you some options of playing like, what is it, normal difficulty? Survival, and nightmare difficulty.
Yeah.
There are 2 sets of these tiles. There's like easy or normal tiles and then nightmare tiles, and it's going to tell you like use maybe some easy ones and some hard ones based on the mix. But this gives you something else that you have to do, something else that you have to prepare for. Then the last thing that you have to prepare for is this weather card. There's going to be a deck of weather cards that they give you for a particular season. We have some winter cards here. You're going to be flipping these over every round, and that's yet another thing that you have to prepare for.
Yeah, like Ryan said, it's going to happen over 6 rounds, and each round is broken up into these 6 phases across the top of that board. The main one being the action phase, which is where you're going to be doing all of your things. And even within that action phase, you're taking 6 actions, and you have this little timer token here to kind of like keep track of how many actions you've taken. The actions are pretty straightforward in terms of what you can do. When you take an action, you're going to move and then do one of the main actions that you can take, one of which could be to move again. And that's how you're going to navigate around this board, interact with the locations, fight some of the monsters, grab some of the resources. There's also a number of free actions that you could take during this action phase where you're crafting things. The crafting book is probably one of the cooler aspects. I mean, honestly, this is a prototype, but the production that we've got going on here is really cool. They've got this nice tray for all of the tokens, but this crafting book is really cool, as opposed to having just a big deck of cards that you like look through, because they are all numbered. They have this so you can actually organize them, and there are 4 of each of these in there for up to 4 different players, because you can craft those things and have them to your sides. And if you're familiar with the game, you'll understand all the different tools that are going to help you to do things, weapons, armor. And in this game specifically, you're going to see particular things that you could interact with that, like for instance, this one requires an axe. So not only do you need to get there and interact with that action, but you have to have crafted an axe to do so.
Yeah, and those items that you craft are going to become kind of part of your tableau. You hold them in your hand and then you use them when you need them. Like you can use them for certain actions like David alluded to. Some of them, like the weapons and armor, you're going to use to fight monsters, which is just another way of getting resources. Like monsters are a threat. They can do damage to you, but you also find yourself wanting to hunt them, to collect them. And you've got all the monsters over here, all of the resources over there. You're collecting all these things to your player board and then using them in a variety of different ways. But your items are going to help with that. You're not going to start with any, but you are going to start with your tableau partially built, because at the start of the game, when you choose your character, you're going to get a couple cards that serve as like that character's special abilities that nobody else has.
Yeah, I, for instance, actually have 4 cards. I'm playing Weber, and I get a couple actual unique resources that I have. And again, like Ryan said, they're effectively powers, but in a way, they're not just powers that are like mimic each other's powers. Like I have one here where I can befriend spiders. So whenever I'm on a tile that has a spider, first of all, those spiders are neutral to me, but I can actually trade some resources to gain an increase on this chart, this table down here, so that when I do fight something, I have this sort of potential army of spiders that are there to help me.
Yeah, that's huge. I'm Wilson, who's like one of the signature characters of the game. He grows a beard, and the beard keeps him warm, which is interesting. I was talking about how you have to prepare for some of the weather effects. Since we're in winter, a lot of them are like freeze effects. You'll find some items, and we'll talk about that more in a second, but also his beard just naturally protects him from some of the cold weather effects, which is pretty cool.
I have a silky beard as well.
It's a cool little effect, but you're going to start with that. You're going to start with your dials set to particular sides, and you're going to start with the number of focus tokens that let you do some re-rolling during the game, which you're going to want to re-roll. Like you're rolling dice for fighting, and you're rolling dice for the randomness of getting some of these different resources when you go scavenging. So you might, want a very particular resource that you only get on a 4 or 5 roll. You can roll those tokens, but all 3 of these dials, your health, your hunger, and your sanity, are going to drop over the course of the game. They will drop faster than you will be able to replenish them. Those needs tiles at the end of the round, a lot of them are going to force some of your stats just to drop. Some of the monsters you fight are not only going to affect your health, they might affect your sanity. Certain effects are going to cause your hunger to drop. If you don't manage those, eventually they'll drop down to nothing, and everything kind of leads into you dying.
Yeah.
Which, Don't Starve is the title of the game.
I think the uninitiated to this game will enter into it and play and play and play and not realize, as these dials just keep dialing down, while you're trying to do things like collect those resources, you do have to pay attention to some of those other things. And in fact, some of the locations, for instance, this one right here, the yellow flowers, if you roll well enough, you'll increase your sanity back up. And there's a number of different things you can do to interact with things that improve things. Even just consuming food in general will allow you to increase some of those stats back up.
Yeah, and you see here, we've got off to the side here. I'll actually hold it up. This is like our little cooking tray. And this is like, if you've played Don't Starve, you know that cooking and crafting is a big part of the game. Not only do we have the crafting book, we also have this cooking tray. And we start with 3 different cooking recipes. You're going to get more of these as you play through the game. And we'll talk about that at the end. But you start the game with a particular number of these, crafting items available. You start with the number of those, and you start with the number of different blueprints of some structures that you have available to you. Those are actually going to start out kind of off to the side on this little tile that represents the portal. So if you're in the portal, you can access these buildings or structures, and those structures are, again, going to help you prepare for some of the things. They're going to help keep you warm or fight off the weather effects. They're going to help provide light for you in the night, because every night tile is going to require some amount of light. And this one repairs an item, but we have some other ones that we could choose to build, but we are using those 3 for this game.
Yeah, and I want to point out one thing when we talk about these cooking recipes and some of the resources and what we've been talking about. A lot of these resources will actually have in the upper left-hand corner a little icon that represents maybe a more basic resource. That resource can be used as that resource. So it doesn't require you always to go hunting very specifically for things, particularly as it relates to these cooking. You can kind of use a lot of the different resources to get these recipes done, but it's a really kind of a cool, elegant way to handle that. Now, with that said, there's some push and pull there, because there may be other things associated with the scenario that are very specifically looking for that type of resource. as opposed to the generic one that it could be turned into. So you want to be careful about like, oh, I'm going to use this to cook, and not realize, oh, we could have used it here to sort of progress further on the scenario.
Well, I think you nailed kind of the pivotal point of Don't Starve, both as the video game, and they captured this really well in the board game. Your resources are limited, and there's like 5 different things that want your resources.
Yeah.
Like for us, we wanted to turn them into the pig to appease him, to turn out, like do his feast. You're going to want to use them to craft. You're going to want to use them to cook. Sometimes you're just going to want to use them to eat them and gain back your health and sanity and things like that. Every time that you're deciding to craft, you're losing resources that maybe could have been used to activate some of these buildings, or to appease the pig king, or just to trigger some of the items in front of you that needs particular items, because nothing in this game lasts forever. All the items that you're creating, every time you're using them, or a lot of times you're using them, especially with fighting, there's some dice that you're rolling. And we'll talk about combat, but throughout the game, as you're using these items, they can break. They can flip over to like a broken side, and then they can break forever.
Oh, yeah.
So then that becomes maybe resources that were maybe not well spent if the item breaks almost instantly.
Well,
so
not only that, some of the resources can also spoil.
Yeah.
Like, there is a shelf life on just about everything in this game, so you kind of have to balance that. You've not only got that overall objective and sort of the 6 rounds and 6 phases of the game to navigate, but there's a timing associated with some of the things you have. You know what? You might get lucky and avoid having things break on you, depending on how you roll. And speaking of rolling, I did want to mention, we've mentioned the dice already. I don't want to give the impression that this game is a dice chucker, though. It's not like you're constantly rolling tons of dice and it has that dice chucker vibe.
No, in fact, you want to roll the least amount of dice possible, actually.
Right. And while you are rolling dice from time to time, particularly when you're interacting with things, it really is just suggesting what you're going to get. And like Ryan said, you've got these reroll tokens that you can use. And then also you're going to be rolling them when you fight. Maybe when you explore an area and you find a hostile enemy, they're immediately going to roll this sort of their monster die because they're hostile. And the die rolling is kind of a sophisticated system. You're going to look at these die, and there's a ton of different little symbols on them. And you're going to look and go, oh, how do I interpret all these? And they've got a lot of the symbols sort of outlined in the back of the rule book. And again, I want to underscore, this is a prototype. I don't even think our rule book had the exhaustive list of all of the
not
things.
Of every icon. There's a lot of icons that could appear.
But it has a pretty elegant and sophisticated way of interpreting how you do these dice. In a fight, you're going to look at these things. You're looking for successes on your end. You're going to look at a combination of the monster die they roll and their monster card in the location to see, okay, what's going to happen to me? Are they going to eliminate or cancel out any of my successes, things like that? So by the time you look at just a few die, you're going to be able to go, okay, here are the results of that fight.
Well, yeah, and the fighting system that they've got here, it's pretty interesting, actually, because a lot of what you're building up, like you can choose to build up a lot of exploration items, and David did mention that a lot of these places, if you want to explore them or interact with them, you need a very particular item. I crafted an axe, which also does have a combat effect of 1 automatic success, but there are actual weapons you can craft as well that will help you in battle. And the monsters all have different strengths. You see on our board, we've got a 3 and we've got a couple 6s. Whenever you fight a monster, that's how many dice they're going to roll. But every piece of equipment that you have that adds to your strength will reduce that down to potentially 1.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean. You actually don't want to roll a ton of monster dice. You're only ever rolling 1 of your die. But if I want to fight this guy unprepared, I'm rolling 6 monster dice, which means there is a huge chance that I'm going to hit some of these faces that do damage back to me, or I'm going to hit some evades that will cancel out my successes. So this is not a game where you're just fighting things willy-nilly. Like, you need to prepare for the fight. And again, I can't stress this enough. If you're spending all your resources preparing for the fight, you're not donating your resources to the scenario, or you're not using them to heal yourself, or you're not using them to activate items and craft and things like that. So you really have to balance how you're going to approach that.
Yeah, for sure. And again, the fighting is not just the only thing you're doing. In fact, for a long time in a scenario, you're going to want to try to avoid fighting for a minute.
Yeah, until you're ready.
Until you're ready, until you're better suited. Because some of these, as you flip them, you could flip this card straight away. It's got 6. You're not going to want to fight that right away. Now, it's hostile, so it's automatically going to get a hostility roll on you. And any monster also that is hostile, whenever you try to interact with the things on that card, if that monster is there, you have to roll one monster die with the die along with when you're trying to attempt to interact with that. So it's always going to have the potential of doing a little damage to you or having some negative effects. The last thing I'll mention about how the die are interpreted when you interact with these monsters, fight them, or hostility, is the die themselves. You can't just look at the die and go, oh, this happens. You look at the die, you also then look back at the monster card, because some of them are going to say this really bad thing happens, but the monster has to roll 2 of these symbols. So if you get that monster
right here, 2 purple.
If you get that monster down to 1 die, guaranteed he's not rolling 2 of those symbols. So that comes into play when you're thinking about how you want to approach and what you want to craft in order to like manipulate the fight before the dice are even rolled.
Yeah. Now, the good thing about combat is that even if you lose, you get something. Yeah, there's like a chart that shows you if you win, like for this one, it's a 6 strength, but if you win, you get its defeat resource 4 times. If you lose, you still get it 2. So that might be worth doing it. However, when they're rolling 6 dice, you could die.
Yeah.
And if you die in this game, the game is over. You can't die. Now, you can collect these little tokens. You might recognize these from the video game. You can collect meat effigies, and they come onto the portal space. And if you do die, you can spend one and come back to life on the portal, just like in the video game. But if you don't have any of these, it's game over for you. So that is one way the game will end. If you run out of time, the game will end. And then some of these scenarios are going to have both defeat and victory conditions. It might say, okay, if you've completed this by a certain time, good, you get to go onto a scenario card for victory. And some of them might just say, if you didn't do that, you just lose. Like, it's just game over.
Yeah, I don't want to ruin what this scenario was. I don't know if this scenario will be part of the normal scenarios, probably. But we alluded to the fact earlier that it kind of took 2 different branches. And what I will say about those, without spoiling it, is if we did well on this one and succeeded, the path sounded
It's a little easier.
A little easier. We took a look at the harder one as well, and it sounded harder.
It did seem like it was harder than...
And not just harder in a way of like, oh, the enemies are just more difficult. It was different enemies.
Different components came out.
Different components. It impacted our board in a way that just threw out yet another hurdle that we had to get past as well. But effectively, it would bring out this portal that we could then just get back to and escape. And that was the end of this scenario. And again, this is the demo, so I don't know if future scenarios or other scenarios will be even more complicated. But this one definitely gave, like Ryan said at the beginning of the video, quite a bit of the flavor of what we were doing in the gameplay.
Yeah, and then based on this scenario, if you manage to get to the end of the scenario, win or lose, you're going to get some upgrade points. And this is, I think, another cool thing that people like to see in games like this is a persistent state that carries over from game to game.
Yeah. Oh, that box.
It is not a campaign game. There's not like a campaign narrative. You don't need to play these scenarios in order. You don't need to bring the same group. It's not legacy. It's nothing like that. But as you progress, you're going to get some points, and you'll get more points if you play it on nightmare mode. The harder you play it, the more points you get. These are unlocks, and they can be used, for example, to unlock new buildings in between games, or new crafting recipes, or new cooking recipes. All these things can be unlocked, and then when you play future games, you're not going to start with those things, but you'll start with the ability to get those things. Like, you might start with some new blueprints that you can use to choose for your 3 buildings, but you might start off with more items or whatever, more ability to do things from game to game. So even if you lose your first game, which you might, your second game might be a little easier just because you've unlocked some stuff.
Yeah, I would say be prepared to lose your first game.
Probably.
And the last thing I'll say too is if you're watching this channel and you're not familiar with Don't Starve the video game and you're more of a, hardcore board gamer, if you will, this game, even though it's based on an IP that you might not be familiar with, this is it feels like a tough as nails, difficult survival game.
It's like a Robinson Crusoe.
This does feel
like that kind of, it's like that hard.
It's definitely along the lines of a Robinson Crusoe. So is it a very meticulous, okay, we got to do this, we got to do this. Oh, on your turn, you should do this, that sort of thing. I will say, now we just played it with the 2 of us, so there's not a lot of there wasn't a lot of quarterbacking. Yeah. And I don't think there necessarily would be, because you've got enough that you're thinking about. Again, like we said, you're really focused on you not dying. If there's 4 people at the table, it would be very difficult for you to kind of nose in on everyone's turn.
But I would say, though, if you're watching this channel as a gamer, and this is probably well within your wheelhouse of game level, and you've got friends that maybe you play Don't Starve with that are not board gamers, for them, as long as you kind of know the game and you're comfortable running it, for the player, it's actually not that hard. There's only like 4 actions you can choose. And a lot of it is like moving, exploring these cards, collecting these resources. As long as you're there to kind of help out, I think this actually could serve as a pretty good bridge from like Don't Starve players to turn them into board game players.
Oh, for sure. The most complicated thing is to really just get an understanding of what all the symbols and iconography does in the game. But once you have that, like Ryan said, following the round structure and following the turn structure of the things that you can do, it's pretty straightforward, but a very challenging game.
Very challenging.
But if you have any questions at all about it, please make them in the comments below. We'll get down there and answer whatever we can. Until next time, make sure everyone has fun at the table, and we'll see you then.